We're going to look at the main announcements in data engineering, data governance, and BI from the last month. Starting with security.
How amazing. So the first one is that private link for connecting your SQL serverless cluster to your storage account is actually on GA, which is incredible. This means that now, if you are in a sector that has a lot of security concerns and you have to have the most secure platform, now you can have actually private link to any of your connections around Databricks. And the one that is now in GA as well is the one from the serverless cluster to the storage accounts. So you can set up these private endpoints through the network connectivity configurations API, which means that you can set it up once, it stays in the account console, and then you can link into many different workspaces, from one to many different workspaces.
Great. And then the next one, GA of next generation Lakeview dashboards, which is very exciting. So now it's generally available on AWS and Azure. And it's basically, we already had dashboards available on Databricks, but this is a completely new dashboarding experience that we have, which is much easier to use, scalable, and, of course, you benefit of all the benefits of our Databricks governance and performance. And so basically, in a nutshell, it has a lot of new capabilities that the previous dashboards didn't have, such as integrating the Databricks assistant, for example, so that you can query data, generate visualizations through a conversational interface. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to leverage the Databricks assistant. For me, it actually helped me, not always, but often, helped me debug some code, which was quite useful.
In this case, we're just prompting it what kind of graphs we want to create based on specific tables, right? And it just goes and creates the graphs, which is really useful.
Exactly. Then another feature that was highly requested by customers is, consolidating into one file so that it's easier to share the dashboard to colleagues or to move it to a new folder. And I know that sharing was a highly requested feature. So now you can just easily also export, import between workspace, including Terraform scripts, and also check into your version control system, such as Git.
That is actually great because so far the dashboards were associated very heavily on a specific workspace.
Yes.
And it was impossible. You had to go and replicate all the work to each different workspace. So this is great. So for reusability across workspaces and teams.
Then, of course, they improve the visualization so that you have a better visualization experience, 10 times faster chart rendering versus the previous version. And then in terms of improvements, you also have scalability and secure distribution through the organization. So now you can basically send periodic email of PDF snapshots and securely share those dashboards to business users and groups. And they do not need to have access to the workspace or to have a viewer license or anything like that in order to receive that. And so soon they expect to have support also for embedding dashboards in web apps and pages, which is very exciting. Yeah.
Again, because before, if you were not having access to Databricks, you could not really see these dashboards unless someone went and exported the PDF version of the dashboard, right? So that can be really changed. This can really change the way working around the dashboards.
And then obviously, as always, they're governed by Unity Catalog with all the advantages that come with using Unity Catalog. So, for example, data lineage, which means that when consumers look at the insights from those visualizations, if they have questions about how those insights were generated, you can always understand where they're coming from. And if there are anomalies, you can do some root cause analysis by following to, the source data that helped generate those visualizations.
The next, also great one, is the Databricks Asset Bundles, or DABs, as we call it internally. And DABs is now on GA, which is great. DABs is mainly the tool we are using to put all the CI/CD and MLOps pipeline in place. And it's based on YAML configurations. So you have your Python project where you have all your code, and then you kind of declare all your infrastructure needs and all your pipeline needs into specific YAML files into the same Python package. And this is what you push then through your CI/CD pipeline, which knows and takes the specific YAML files and creates the resources on Databricks to do your tests or to deploy different parts of your code in an automatic way. So this is our main tool for MLOps and CI/CD. Another interesting feature is when you serve models with the Databricks model serving and you kick off the serving endpoints, we had a lot of requests and questions from the customers that they wanted to grab the schema of the endpoint before they actually use the endpoint. So they wanted to know what endpoint is about, what input they should send to the endpoint, and what output to expect so that they incorporate it with different other microservices or other pipelines. So that is done now with getting the schema out of model serving, which is small, but really it's going to make a difference to whoever is working with microservices and hitting endpoints frequently and many different endpoints.
Is the ability now to run your jobs with serverless compute for workflows. So for anyone who's like me and doesn't want to deal with anything that has to do with infrastructure or hosting, this is your go-to feature basically. And so you can look at the documentation on how to get started. I believe that right now it was just announced as being on gated public preview, as you can see here, but customers have been asking for this for a while. It was for a long time in private preview. So it's very exciting. And also another thing to note, which is not here, but you can also actually now use serverless compute in order to run your notebooks, which is also something I think that was announced recently. So here you can just look at the documentation in order to see all the configs on how to make that happen. But yeah, available in public preview.
So great stuff this month, right?
Yes, a lot of announcements, but this is the headlines.